Per usual, everything on this channel is for educational purposes only and is not intended as financial advice. It's Setup Sunday once again, back from Thanksgiving festivities. Let's take a look at some charts. This is really the only important chart that matters to me in this very moment for the week, because if this breaks down, that means everything breaks down. If this continues to climb the wall of worry, that probably means there's continued ETF news catalyst hopium, which is the most likely scenario that this just continues, this channel. But everyone should have a near-term view and a long-term view. And the near-term view right now is we're in an upward channel. Be careful. It's ugly chop. Now, it doesn't look blatantly bearish. We tried to paint a pretty impressive head and shoulders, broke higher, broke down again, right? It's all over the place. So the view for the week is definitely, what does this look like, right? If this is down by Friday, if we break 35 by Friday or before, that likely means that Sol, Link, all the other ones break down twice as far percentage-wise, and you get an opportunity for excellent entries. If we continue in this wall of worry, wall of hopium, maybe, I get nervous because I don't get a great entry for me personally on any leverage positions, but that is what it is. The easier trade here, I think, is everything takes a little bit of a breather. So we'll go over some more charts in a second, but the most important stuff obviously is still the same. Nothing's changed. We're just waiting for the inevitable ETF stuff in Q1. So that's a given. The hidden bearish part that is starting to get talked about is the GBTC unlock. If that product actually becomes liquid, we will have an interesting period on our hands where all of a sudden there's thousands and thousands of BTC that could potentially go to market, right? I would think that's more bearish than bullish, but the whole spot ETF conversation may neutralize the bearishness there. We also have some bearishness coming potentially just based on supply with Gox coins. Nobody likes to hear that, I understand, but these people have been holding for a long time, and I'm sure some of them have better things to do with the money than continue holding, but I could be wrong. And obviously Bitcoin halving hash rate, by the way, just continues to go to infinity. So I'll look at the miners at the very end. One of the reasons I don't like the miners as a play, and I may be too right curved on this, is that they're going to have a harder time hitting profitability targets if everyone around the world is mining Bitcoin, unless they keep up with their percentage of the hash rate. But this is coming also Q1, right? Q1, Q2, April, whatever. So what you really don't want to do here is blow up on leverage, because this is easy mode, okay? And yeah, you're gonna get the doomers, okay? The doomers are gonna be after you. They're gonna be saying, look, there's a recession, it's over. Hey, that may be the case. Rates coming down may be bad. Historically, I think they have been bad. Rates have currently hit a ceiling, arguably. Unlikely that rates continue rising. And the ETF is a form of regulatory clarity. Binance getting cleaned up a little bit, form of regulatory clarity. But really what we need is congressional bills, something concrete here besides enforcement actions. And I'll talk about this tomorrow, but the retail resilience following Black Friday stuff, the numbers are there for it. And again, the doomers are glass half empty, right? So I'll talk about that more tomorrow, but this is more for altcoins, much like 2020, right? If retail is flush with cash and they want to gamble, arguably one place to do that is alt and NFTs. So if you're an altcoin maxi, you better hope Main Street is okay throughout 2024 and 2025. Liquidity obviously is a big part of prices going up or down, right? We need cash in the ecosystem. If they're closing exchanges and closing on-ramps, that's a problem. One way to get liquidity into the system is through stablecoins. USDC is still kind of down in the dumps here, below 25 billion. Tether continuing to sort of drink USDC's milkshake a little bit, continuing to grow, and is at all-time highs. So that's certainly more bullish than bearish on balance. And we're getting to the point where Bitcoin, at least, doesn't really need stables to get propped up. Doesn't even need on-ramps per se. Because if we've got global ETP, ETF, ETN products is what these are here, where we're seeing 300 million, 300, whatever this is, 26 million inflows past week, then we're certainly going to feel that on the spot side. So that's definitely good news. We're seeing continuous flows here leading into the ETF. We'll see if we see any after the ETF. Arguably, we should. Again, the doomers dooming all over this place. They're just dooming their doom all over, saying it doesn't matter. Their flows are going to be trash. Okay, like I'm not going to flat out say that's impossible, but let's see what happens. Let's see what happens and adapt accordingly. Okay, how can you be bearish here, right? We're unlocking access to the largest pools of capital the world has. That shouldn't be bearish. What's also not bearish for crypto and the liquidity related, rates related, the DXY dollar index continuing to come down. This looks extremely bearish. It looked bearish a couple of weeks ago with the head and shoulders. It's broken down quicker and further than even I expected. And really the big level is 100. This is something to pay attention to into 2024. But if we start to decline from 100 to 90 in 2024, I mean, that's game over. I mean, that's a six-figure Bitcoin, okay? So don't blow up on some stupid altcoin on KYC, MCX, Max, Bex, okay? On some dumb offshore exchange, okay? Please, just do me a favor and don't do that. Looking at the alt market cap, taking out Bitcoin, taking out ETH, you can see how the importance of that liquidity injection was. It's been talked about several times now, but we're hitting a natural TA point here where it's going to be harder to keep going unless we see more liquidity come into the system. So we're at the top of the range. If we look at all these alts, Solana, Link, right, SNX, ETHE, I mean, I can keep going, all of them. They're sort of at a natural place where we'd see resistance, and you're seeing that in this broader sense on the index. So unless there's a massive injection of liquidity for the alt market, which I don't think we're going to see in the very near term, unless, if the Tether market cap doubles, okay, then sure, send it, right? Send it to infinity. But I don't think we're going to see that anytime super soon. Now, there's some multiplier effect here, obviously, right? We had 5 billion in Tether and X billion in market cap into alts. So it doesn't take much, obviously, but it helps that a lot of these were down 80, 90%. And across the board, I'm kind of seeing this type of cloud chart for most of the alts that haven't moved yet. So I do think there are some great early plays remaining that should do best after the Bitcoin halving, which should also be after the ETF approval. And there's clearly, right, an edge to edge here, a 2x on whatever this is, doesn't really matter. But you can see ETHE very similar, SNX very similar. All of these have multi-month consolidation periods. Comp, the Dino DeFi crew, ADA, I'll throw that in there, sure. Most of these are worthless, let's be honest, okay? They don't have users, they don't have fees, they don't have apps, they don't have DeFi, they don't have anything. These are alt layer 1 ETH killers. ADA is just as behind ETH as it was 8 years ago, okay? I don't know what it's going to take to change that, if ever. I don't really care. I'm just looking at the chart, and it's a massive potential for a move into 2024. So I do think there's grounds for putting some of these into a portfolio sleeve and just, for me, it's like, let it ride, like, look, what are your stop losses going to be on all this stuff? New lows, 50% down, whatever, right? We're talking about 3 to 5x in all these easily if the TA pans out. And I'd much rather buy these now or into Bitcoin halving and just sit on them. That's just my way to play them than sort of micromanage them in 2024. So anyway, dominance still looks good on the Bitcoin side. I don't think it's most alts time yet. Obviously, some alts have done extraordinarily well. They were also down 99% last year. Okay, so keep that in mind. Yes, some of these have done, like Solana, extremely well. Dominance does have a TKC clamp, as does almost everything on the spot USD side, but it is exiting. We're about to exit this weekly cloud. So if the TA is real here, sure, we could shed 5% on dominance. I don't know why we would, like we're not getting an ETH ETF first. We're not getting a Solana ETF first, if ever. Okay, so this very much looks like bullish continuation eventually. And I want to talk about GBTC and ETHE first because The discounts continue to close. The GBTC discount is down to sub 10%. I think it's around 8-9%, the lowest it's been in a very long time. And when this was at 40, people were talking about the carry trade where they're short spot, long GBTC. As this discount closes in the orange here, the blue is ETHE. As the discount closes, that trade starts to close. The risk reward on that trade starts to close. And ideally, spot becomes more attractive relative to GBTC, assuming you have access to both, which isn't a lot of institutions. But GBTC as a chart looks phenomenal, looks kind of parabolic or ready to be parabolic. And if they're really going to give me 45 based on the early pivot, based on VPVR, I will be more than happy to sell at 45. If they're going to be stupid enough to give me a premium, they being whoever's buying this, if they give me a premium on GBTC, oh man, I'll be a happy camper. Would love to sell at 45 or at a premium or at 0 on the discount. And this chart does look better than spot, continues to look better than spot. It'll be interesting to see what happens to spot once the discount closes completely, right? Once this 8% zeroes out, which it should. That's what the market's betting on. You know, you'll hear people say closed-end fund should have 10% or whatever, right? But the premium and discount for GBTC has always been based on some sort of ETF, right? It's always like a live bet on whatever ETF is happening, dating back since 2018. And now that this thing can potentially convert, yeah, it looks good. The odds look really good. And this discount closing is certainly great for the spot side. The edge-to-edge trade, you know, as I'm talking about getting greedy to 45, the edge-to-edge trade is almost complete. And realistically, I'm hoping to close out the entirety of this position the day the news hits that there's some sort of BlackRock ETF or 6 ETFs that get approved on the same day, which is probably going to happen. That's the day I close this. Now, for capital gains reasons, I hope it's not until January, okay? But if it's this year, it's this year. It is what it is. So I'll take a 0 discount. I'll take 45 on the pivot. I'll take the news catalyst. I'll take it all. Doesn't matter. Pick one. Love it. Trade looks great to close soon. ETHE also looks increasingly parabolic here. Continues to just reconsolidate and climb. Definitely not seeing that on the ETH spot side. This is much smaller than GBTC as a trust. So I don't know how many people are realistically involved in that carry trade. Discount slightly larger than the GBTC side here, but I'll take 24 all day. You know, I don't think we get to 44 based on the edge to edge through the cloud. I would certainly take 24, 25, 26, but there is more upside in the near term potentially based on when that news hits, right? You're kind of just guessing here relative to the news, relative to what moves more on the day, relative to whether or not it's going to be buy the rumor, sell the news, you know, all these sort of things. But 2 charts to continue to pay attention to. All right, let's go to long-term Bitcoin real quick. Most of this stuff hasn't changed over the past 3 weeks. This is a site I came across the other day from BitBo BTC. I'll put the link to all these in the description. Kind of a different way of looking at rainbow charts, having price regression. So it's based on having prices. It sets a midpoint or baseline and then rainbows out from there. And again, we're at the bottom, plenty of room. Love it. It goes to 2040. Can't wait. This is another one I've tried to recreate for years on my own and never been able to. It's basically the power law corridor straightened out. Okay. So again, it gives a projection for 2025, 2026-ish, whenever that important date lines up. You know, so if we're above 350 in 2025, either the world has exploded in a terrible way or things have really changed, you know. So yes, I like 250 to 350 in 2025 as a potential. You know, you gotta have your 5-year plan mapped out at least. Then he's got all sorts of fun stuff on here. Beam indicator was what I was looking at the other day. I can't really explain it. I don't know what we're looking at here, but something to just, you know, do your homework, poke around. Not a sponsor or anything. Just had some interesting charts on the site. Weekly cloud for Bitcoin hasn't changed. 42 is still the level. This can go all the way down to 27, still be fine. The risk reward as a setup obviously gets worse up here, assuming 42 is the level that we reach and pull back from. Maybe it's 47. You know, again, this is dependent on a news catalyst that's positive that everybody's waiting for. Maybe we sell off on the day to 25. I don't know, but I like upside over downside still here, and I like at least 42 probably by the end of the year. I don't hate 32 either. I don't hate finally retracing a little bit. I think everybody can breathe a little sigh of relief. 32 to 42, that's a better trade anyway. You know, watch us break down just based on technicals to 32, and then the news catalyst happens in a couple weeks. Wick to 42, sell off on that week right after the euphoria is over, and then it's just boring until April. You know, things could play out like that. We're in a massive range here based on the cloud, and it is a dangerous game being inside of the cloud trying to predict what's going on, which is why I'm usually just focused on the edge to edge, right? Once that hits, I'm out. Right? Then everybody else can play their fun games. So we still have a lot of room on the weekly there. The daily is suggesting overbought conditions, bear div in a sense. You know, we have a massive TK separation here, but ultimately you're just looking at the 4-hour upward channel. You know, that's really the most important thing here. I don't think there's any patterns or anything on the daily. It's just super ugly. You know, day over day of retracing back and forth isn't exactly something I'm looking to play on leverage. I'd rather wait for 32 and figure it out from there. And if we do bounce at 32, I think that would be the first Kijun bounce of the year. So that would be a very good sign for bullish continuation. So we'll see. We'll see if we get 32. I don't know. Based on Williams Alligator, Williams fractals, we're also kind of reaching the end of the line. This is just 3 moving averages and another indicator that tells you if you're making higher highs or higher lows. We've made higher highs up until mid-November. Really since then, right? We haven't made a higher high. Certainly haven't made a lower low yet. But if we break this red moving average, that is a stopping out condition. And below the support fractal would be a stopping out condition. So we're close to that, right? Now, on the flip side, if we make a new higher high, 38, 38.5, whatever that is, this system is saying, okay, that's another entry. Go for it. So the long is still alive and active. It's just getting closer to getting pretty tired up here, right? So all in all, for BTC, the most important thing is that channel. I mean, that hasn't really changed over the past week. Talking about ETH, zooming out, I think you have to zoom out on ETH at this point because you'd get pretty depressed looking at this price action over the past 2 years. ETH does better after Bitcoin's halvings, does best at the beginning of the year. So we'll see how that matches actual price action next year. Does ETH take off in April 2024? I don't know. Based on a similar rainbow type chart for ETH, certainly at the bottom bound of the bands here. And if ETH is at 27K, I might just throw up in my mouth a little bit in 2026, but whatever. Log regression, probably a bit more realistic, 3 to 7, and that's going to change over time. So we'll see, but the targets don't look bearish. You know, if anything, this chart potentially looks more realistic because, you know, 7 is potentially the mid 2024 target, right? Like if things really take off and ETH catches a bid for some relative value reason, you know, sure, 7, Bitcoin at 80, you know, whatever it is. Look at the daily cloud for ETH. Also very ugly candles up here. Just, you know, maybe this is an M double top. I don't know. I don't think it's anything turbo bullish for sure, but 1800 will be the level, 1820 for daily cloud. There's also, you know, back to long-term pitchfork type stuff, some evidence for the lower bounds being hit there. So eventually the ETH maxis will get paid. Might take a few more months, might take a year, probably won't take a year, but it'll take a few more months probably. By that time, relative to Bitcoin, you'll probably be extremely upset. But eventually in the USD pair, it should catch up. Alligator fractal for ETH hasn't triggered a stop loss yet. Support, 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 support. And current support would be midline of the alligator. Hasn't triggered a new entry either since early November for a long. So still active, but getting closer and closer to risking out hitting that trailing stop loss. ETH BTC, I have nothing new to say. Still bearish. It's just a flows thing. We don't even have to argue about the fundamentals. I do think this hits 037 eventually. It's just going to take some time. We'll see what happens when the ETFs hit. And if you want to trade an actual bullish BTC pair, Sol BTC in the weekly cloud, I don't know how much further this goes, but from an edge-to-edge setup, whatever these values actually are, I don't know. It doesn't look terrible, right? From a risk-reward perspective, you'd rather catch it at the bottom. So this actually retracing a little bit throughout 2024 would make sense to me based on flows. Again, it's all about flows and liquidity. You know, is Main Street buying Sol more than Wall Street is buying Bitcoin? Ask yourself that. In any event, kind of at a natural stopping point there. For Sol, this is something else. Look, I post these charts on Twitter. People get upset. They think I'm making some grandiose call. No, this is just a trading system, okay? Look, I see 3 drives. I don't get more bullish. I see a head and shoulders fractal. I don't assume it breaks down. I just don't keep longing, okay? So this will never be bullish to me. There were so many people, I can't tell you, who told me for sure that we're going higher. Heck, we may go higher. We may still go higher. But if I see a head and shoulders fractal, ever, for any reason, I'm never assuming continuation. Ever. Period. Same thing with the 3 drives. I never assume continuation. So this, for me, is a risk metric that's saying, be careful, Will Robinson, be careful. And it continues to look heavy and gross. Would love Sol down here, 38, 45. I don't know. I might not get it. But if I do, great. At this point, the bear div has probably reset. Typically, you want to see a div, at least hit the midpoint. If we can hit sub 30, great. But plenty of targets still remaining on the drive that Sol has had here. On the weekly USD cloud, 130 eventually. The most ugly, brutal, amazing thing from a trading perspective would be retracing down here to the 20s and 30s. I don't think we'll get that, at least not unless some regulatory thing slams Solana shut. Maybe we'll get a wick down here. Maybe it's a recession wick. Maybe it's a regulatory wick. I don't know. But 22 to 130 is a better trade than 56 to 130, if we're being honest here. But it still looks very good. On the daily, you also have a TKC clamp here forming. It is curling up, kind of like Bitcoin, right? But, you can kind of see the 3 drives even on the daily. You could call this a flag. You could call this a bull pennant, something, But for the moment, I'm not going to assume continuation. Again, mid-40s would be the target there on Solana. And it's already tripped up on trailing stop loss fractal. So at this point, I would need to see a higher high breaking a resistance fractal, which would be 61 currently. And you can see since we made the current high, we have not broken above a resistance fractal. And the current stop loss, we're almost there at around 55. So this is a very tight trade at the moment based on the alligator fractal stuff. The long is hanging on by a thread. And if anything, if you're being honest with yourself, this should have been out the door in the high 50s already. So it's definitely limping along here. Link, same thing, looks okay. I like that these are starting to retrace a little bit and calm down. Would love Link at 10 or 12. Just a little bit too exuberant. But this weekly edge to edge still very much intact. Daily cloud support also somewhere around 12 there. And then for some equities real quick, Coin looks phenomenal. Again, I don't love Coinbase, but if you're Joe Public and you know nothing about crypto, or you're Joe Wall Street, Joe institution, and you know nothing about crypto, one way to immediately get exposure is something like Coin. And maybe this acts as a mega inverted head and shoulders. Maybe it has a cup and handle here eventually. Whatever, right? All of that still points higher. Cloud loves it. Pivots love it. Weekly cloud is somewhere around 200 as well. So unless we get more SEC enforcement actions against Coinbase, which is perfectly possible, certainly looks like we'll see a strong continuation there. The miners aren't my favorite play, but admittedly, they are starting to break north of their potential head and shoulders, shoulder, head. We're breaking through the daily cloud. So Marathon looking a little better. Riot looking a little better. And CleanSpark also looking a little better. I like CleanSpark from a pure business perspective play. They have almost no Bitcoin on their balance sheet. They've got one of the best hash rate to market cap ratios. They may not outperform these other miners who have more BTC on their balance sheet, but I still like them as a miner. That's all for this one. Like, dislike, comment, share, subscribe, and happy trading.